What if the real reason women lose interest has nothing to do with your looks or your value, but with how desperately you try to hold on? Most men are taught that attraction grows through effort, through reassurance, through consistency and emotional availability. Machiavelli would have mocked this belief. Because the moment you stop being unpredictable, the moment you revolve your life around her, attraction begins to fade. Mystery disappears, and with it the chase. Today we confront a harsh reality: why women stop pursuing, and how men unknowingly accelerate that outcome. Men assume that being present creates attachment, that consistency fuels desire, that emotional openness guarantees value. This is a misunderstanding of human nature. Desire does not grow from what is always there. It grows from what can be lost. The mind places value on scarcity. What feels guaranteed is taken lightly. This isn't cruelty, it's psychology. Machiavelli understood that people protect what they fear losing and neglect what they believe will stay no matter what. Attraction follows the same rule. The moment your time, attention, and emotional energy appear limitless, her subconscious shifts from desire to comfort. And comfort, while safe, is not intoxicating. Obsession is never built on certainty. It is built on tension. Most men eliminate that tension without realizing it. They respond immediately. They rearrange their lives. They justify themselves when questioned. They over-explain their emotions, hoping honesty will deepen connection. What they're actually doing is draining attraction at its source. Tension is the engine of desire. Machiavelli warned leaders against appearing too eager to please, because eagerness signals weakness. The same law applies in attraction. When you are always available, you quietly communicate that your life has no direction beyond her. No priorities, no internal momentum. That perception lowers your value, not consciously but instinctively. Scarcity is not manipulation. It is structure. A life that is full. Attention that must be earned. Silence that does not frighten you. When you are silent, her mind fills the space. And once imagination takes over, detachment becomes difficult. Predictable presence fades into the background. Selective presence creates pull. Scarcity creates gravity. Excess availability dissolves it. This is why men who are always there are often taken for granted, while men who remain slightly out of reach continue to be desired. Not because they are cruel, not because they play games, but because absence creates movement and constant presence creates stagnation. In attraction, eagerness sends a clear signal. When you are constantly available, you reveal that nothing else in your life competes for your attention. No momentum, no direction, no force moving you forward without her. That signal quietly reduces your value. Scarcity is not about tactics or manipulation. It's about substance. A life that is genuinely occupied. Attention that must be deserved. Silence that does not unsettle you. When you are comfortable with silence, her mind begins to work in your absence. And once imagination is activated, detachment becomes difficult. Consider this carefully. When she doesn't know what you're doing, curiosity forms. When she doesn't know when she'll hear from you, anticipation grows. When your emotional position isn't obvious, she invests more energy trying to interpret it. This isn't strategy. It's how uncertainty affects the human mind. Machiavelli observed that people cling more tightly to unstable power than to comfortable certainty. Attraction follows the same principle. Predictable presence fades into the background. Selective presence carries weight. Scarcity creates pull. Excess availability erases it. That is why men who are always present are often overlooked, while men who remain slightly out of reach continue to be pursued. Not because they are cruel, not because they play games, but because absence creates motion, and constant presence creates stagnation. The distinction has nothing to do with cruelty, arrogance, or manufactured mystery. The real difference is this: one man's absence creates emotional movement, while another man's constant presence creates emotional stillness. You need to understand this at a deeper level. Attraction does not follow logic. It follows emotion. And emotion responds to contrast. Light is visible because there is darkness. Desire exists because there is distance. When you pull back with intention, you give her space to step forward. When you stop overgiving, you allow her to invest. When you stop explaining yourself, certainty dissolves and curiosity takes its place. And curiosity is the gateway to obsession. Most men resist scarcity because they fear being forgotten. Machiavelli would have recognized this fear immediately and labeled it weakness. A man who is afraid to limit access reveals dependence, and dependence repels. A man who is comfortable being scarce communicates abundance, options, stability, a sense that his value does not depend on being chosen. That confidence is felt instinctively, long before it is consciously understood. Scarcity also exposes intent. Someone who is merely entertained will drift away when access is reduced. Someone who is genuinely drawn in will move closer. Both outcomes work in your favor. Machiavelli favored clarity over illusion. This principle offers exactly that. Once you understand it, your behavior changes. You stop chasing reactions. You stop filling every silence. You stop trying to secure desire through reassurance. Instead, you allow attraction to develop naturally. Because the human mind is drawn to what it cannot fully predict, cannot fully possess, and risks losing if it hesitates. Understand this clearly. This is the point where power is either taken or surrendered. Attraction is not decided by appearance, words, or effort. It is decided by who controls the frame. Machiavelli understood that authority belongs to the one who defines the situation, not the one who responds to it. The same rule governs attraction with unforgiving accuracy. Most men don't realize they are living inside someone else's frame. They adjust their tone according to her mood. They modify their behavior to avoid discomfort. They wait for reassurance before acting. This is not intimacy. It is compliance mistaken for interest. The moment you begin reacting instead of directing, control shifts away from you. When she creates distance, you pursue. When she tests, you justify. When warmth is withheld, you compensate. Each reaction sends the same silent signal. Her emotions dictate your actions. And once that message is established, attraction weakens. Machiavelli warned that leaders who hesitate or seek approval lose authority. The same dynamic applies here. A man who moves within another person's emotional frame becomes predictable, manageable, safe. Safety may provide comfort, but it does not generate desire. Controlling the frame is not about dominance or emotional withdrawal. It is about self-command. You act from principle, not pressure. You speak because you choose to, not because silence unsettles you. You give attention deliberately, not automatically. When tension arises, you don't rush to dissolve it. Women are highly attuned to emotional leadership. They test not to provoke conflict, but to observe who holds direction. When you over-explain, seek reassurance, or soften your boundaries under pressure, the test is failed, usually without your awareness. A man who holds the frame does not ask for permission with his presence. He does not negotiate his identity when emotions fluctuate. His composure communicates stability more effectively than explanation ever could. Most men assume harmony is built through agreement. Machiavelli understood that respect is built through firmness. A reality that bends too easily loses structure. A solid frame invites others to adapt to it. This is why demanding clarity often erodes attraction. When you press for explanations, timelines, or guarantees, you reveal intolerance for uncertainty. And intolerance for uncertainty exposes dependence. Dependence dissolves desire. A man who holds the frame remains steady even in ambiguity. He does not need immediate resolution to remain grounded. And that steadiness, not effort, is what quietly sustains attraction. He is able to remain silent without tension. He allows space to exist without rushing to close it. That restraint creates pull. It communicates something quietly but clearly. You are not driven by her reactions. You are centered in yourself. Machiavelli observed that people gravitate toward those who remain composed when circumstances are unclear. In attraction, certainty has nothing to do with results. It has everything to do with identity. You know who you are whether she responds warmly or not. You maintain your direction whether approval is given or withheld. That inner stability forces adjustment. And because people instinctively align with strength, Holding the frame also means refusing to compete for attention. The man who competes reveals lack. The man who disengages from competition signals surplus. When you do not chase validation, you announce, without words, that you are not dependent on it. Many men fear that if they stop pursuing, they will lose her. Machiavelli would have dismissed this fear immediately. Anything that survives only through pursuit was never power in the first place. If your presence must be constantly reinforced, it lacks structure. There is nothing solid beneath it. When your frame remains intact, a subtle reversal occurs. She begins to move toward you. She seeks alignment with your rhythm. She invests, not because you demanded it, but because your emotional center remains unmoved. This is the shift most men never experience. They believe attraction is built through pursuit. In reality, attraction follows direction. And when you possess direction, others naturally fall in step. When you chase, you dissolve into someone else's direction. When you hold the frame, you determine the rhythm, the pace, the tone, and the emotional current of the connection. And when a woman senses that your world does not collapse without her presence, she doesn't attempt to flee it. She becomes curious about entering it. This is a difficult truth, but an unavoidable one. People do not fixate on what they fully understand. Fixation emerges in the space between certainty and mystery. Machiavelli understood that power is most effective when it is experienced, not completely exposed. Attraction follows the same unseen rule. Most men assume that clarity produces safety, and safety produces loyalty. So they reveal intentions too early. They define the relationship prematurely. They expose their emotional position in full. They believe transparency will remove doubt and strengthen the bond. What it actually removes is curiosity. And once curiosity disappears, emotional momentum fades. A woman does not become deeply invested because everything is clear. She becomes invested when her emotions are engaged, but her conclusions remain unfinished. When feeling is activated and understanding is incomplete, the mind keeps returning, attempting to resolve the tension. And it is within that unresolved space that attraction sustains itself. Machiavelli recognized that people are unsettled by what they cannot anticipate and drawn toward what they cannot fully command. Emotional uncertainty combines both forces. This is not disorder. It is not emotional cruelty. It is controlled unpredictability. The man who generates obsession is not unstable. His character is steady, but access to his inner world is measured. This is where most men misinterpret the principle. They assume uncertainty means inconsistency, mood swings, emotional games, sudden withdrawal driven by insecurity. That is weakness, not power. True uncertainty is calm. It is grounded. It belongs to a man who does not feel compelled to broadcast his emotions as they occur. When you constantly reassure, you erase emotional resistance. When you explain everything, you close every unanswered thread. The human mind is uncomfortable with open loops, yet it fixates on them. By leaving certain things unresolved, you invite her mind to engage. And whatever the mind is forced to work on, it begins to value. This is how fixation develops, not through dramatic gestures, not through excessive effort, but through unanswered questions. Why did he say that? Why did he pause instead of explaining? Why does he feel present, yet not dependent? These questions generate internal conversation, and internal conversation is where attachment quietly takes root. Machiavelli understood that mystery reinforces authority. A leader who exposes every intention invites opposition. A leader who leaves room for interpretation preserves influence. Attraction operates under the same principle. When you explain everything, you surrender leverage. When you allow meaning to form on its own, intrigue remains alive. Emotional uncertainty also redistributes investment. When everything is settled and defined, emotional movement slows. When something remains unresolved, the mind searches for closure. She begins to invest emotionally, not because you demand it, but because she wants understanding. Most men are afraid of being misunderstood. Machiavelli would have considered this fear misplaced. Being partially unknown is often safer than being completely revealed too early. Familiarity dulls attention. Mystery sharpens it. When she senses that she has not fully reached you, she moves closer. This is why predictability erodes desire. If your reactions are guaranteed, if forgiveness is automatic, if presence is assured, if explanations are constant, there is no emotional risk. And without risk, there is no excitement. Without excitement, attraction weakens. A man who sustains emotional uncertainty does not remove warmth. He simply refuses to offer guarantees before they are earned. He allows the connection to expand and contract naturally, to develop its own rhythm, without forcing definitions prematurely. Machiavelli warned that those who rush to secure power often lose it. In attraction, rushing toward commitment reveals fear of loss. Fear is perceived even when unspoken, and once fear enters the dynamic, balance shifts away from you. When you are emotionally grounded, uncertainty emerges effortlessly, not as a tactic, but as a byproduct of inner stability. You are not trying to confuse her. You are simply refusing to chase closure. You are not rushing to define. You are not forcing reassurance. You are not scrambling to lock certainty in place. This calm detachment is unsettling in a world where most men are ruled by reaction. Her attention begins to orbit. She replays moments. She searches for patterns. She tries to interpret what isn't immediately given. And in that effort, attachment forms. Obsession is not born from possession. It is born from pursuit. Pursuit only exists when access feels incomplete. When she senses that your emotional world isn't available on demand, access becomes valuable. Not because you withhold warmth, but because you don't surrender it freely. This is not coldness. It is selectivity. Warmth without submission. Presence without explanation. Interest without dependence. Machiavelli understood that influence is maintained by regulating access. In attraction, the same rule applies. Reveal enough to engage, never enough to dissolve mystery. Allow her to feel you, but never to fully contain you, because what cannot be fully contained is rarely abandoned. This is the final principle, the one that stabilizes all the others. Without it, scarcity turns into fear. Frame control becomes rigidity. Uncertainty decays into insecurity. Machiavelli recognized that true power does not come from clinging, but from the ability to release without losing oneself. Most men claim they could walk away. Very few actually can. Very few men truly possess this ability. And women recognize the difference immediately. The man who cannot walk away bargains for his worth. He tolerates what quietly angers him. He stays silent when lines are crossed. He exchanges self-respect for continued access. This is not devotion. It is survival wearing the mask of commitment. Machiavelli cautioned leaders against relying on the goodwill of others for stability. In attraction, dependence functions the same way. Emotional dependence destroys leverage faster than any mistake. The instant she senses that losing her would unsettle you, the balance tilts away from you. Walking away is not a move. It is a stance. It is not spoken. It is embodied. It shows in your posture, in your composure, in your silence. In the standards you enforce, you don't declare it. You reveal it through what you refuse to accept and what you are prepared to lose. A man who can walk away does not argue endlessly. He does not plead for understanding. He does not chase explanations. He observes. He decides. He acts. That quiet decisiveness is rare. And rarity by its nature creates value. Most men avoid walking away because they assume attraction is delicate. Machiavelli would have rejected that assumption outright. Anything that fragile was never stable to begin with. If your presence needs constant defense, explanation, or negotiation, its influence is already fading. When you are the prize, you don't argue your value. You safeguard it. This is where standards become decisive. A man without standards accepts whatever is offered. A man with standards will inevitably be tested. Tests are not punishment. They are assessment. She is not trying to push you away. She is observing where you draw the line. When you collapse under pressure, the failure happens quietly. Walking away doesn't mean leaving at the first moment of discomfort. It means knowing the boundary you will not compromise. It means choosing inner peace over temporary connection, self-respect over emotional intoxication. Machiavelli believed that those willing to relinquish power often, end up commanding more of it. When you are genuinely prepared to lose a woman rather than lose yourself, a paradox emerges. She senses the absence of grasping, the lack of desperation, and that absence changes the dynamic, not through force, but through gravity. And where attachment disappears, freedom takes its place. And where freedom exists, desire remains alive. The man who is capable of walking away does not seek control. He does not rely on manipulation. His power comes from detachment, not from emotional coldness. He cares, but he is not imprisoned by outcomes. This creates a quiet paradox. The less you require her to stay, the more she feels drawn to choose you. Not because you demanded it, but because your presence is not begging for validation. Most men try to become desirable by collecting external symbols: status, appearance, money. Machiavelli would have seen these as instruments, not foundations. Real value rests in a man who is internally steady, self-directed, and unthreatened by loss. When a woman recognizes that your life continues, with or without her, she is faced with a real decision: to step into your world or to remove herself from it. And when that decision is genuine, attraction shifts from impulse to intention. Walking away also serves as protection. It filters out instability, emotional manipulation, unnecessary drain. It ensures that the woman who remains does so by choice, not because you endured behavior you shouldn't have. And when choice replaces tolerance, connection gains weight. A man who is truly the prize does not cling to possibility. He responds to what is real. He doesn't stay for promises. He stays for alignment. Machiavelli understood that authority sustained by fear eventually collapses, while authority rooted in respect endures. In attraction, the same principle applies. When you are able to walk away, respect follows. And respect is the ground where lasting desire takes hold. This is why the capacity to leave is the strongest trigger of attraction. It communicates self-worth without arrogance, strength without aggression, confidence without spectacle. When she realizes that losing you would cost more than holding on to comfort, control loses its appeal. She doesn't attempt to contain you. She chooses you, because nothing draws interest more reliably than a man who values himself enough to step away from what does not value him. Machiavelli never taught men how to be adored. He taught them how to recognize power. And attraction has always obeyed the same laws as power. Once those laws are understood, everything you once tried to force begins to unfold on its own. A woman doesn't pursue because she's asked to. She moves forward because something inside her has been stirred. Scarcity gives your presence weight. Frame control gives your world structure. Emotional ambiguity keeps her attention active. And the capacity to walk away makes your value unquestionable. Most men fail at this because they try to lock desire in place instead of letting it develop. They give too much. They explain too quickly. They attach too deeply. They assume effort produces attraction. Machiavelli would have rejected that belief. Effort without leverage breeds disregard, not devotion. When you live by these principles, your behavior shifts. You stop chasing results. You stop fearing loss. You stop bargaining for your worth. You become composed, grounded, internally sovereign. And from that position, attraction is no longer something you hunt. It is something that moves toward you. This is not manipulation. It is alignment with human nature. People are drawn to strength, to restraint, to mystery, to self-command. And when those qualities are present, desire follows without being forced. When these qualities become part of who you are, tactics become unnecessary. You don't rely on tricks, strategies, or promises. Your presence speaks on its own. A woman remains drawn, not because she is confined, but because she is never able to fully possess you. She chooses you freely, and freedom is the only environment where desire can survive. Machiavelli understood that the most powerful influence is never obvious. It is subtle. It is felt, not announced. When you master yourself, others align naturally without persuasion, without pressure. And when desire is rooted in choice rather than need, it does not weaken over time. It evolves. It intensifies. That is the difference between attraction that fades and attraction that endures.